These are, I can call them the remains of the Mamelodi cemetery records. The books had fallen apart, and so we asked the cemetery. There were literally boxes and boxes full of loose pages, and so we asked if we could take them and try to make some order and to photograph them, because every time they get handled, you know, more and more gets lost. And then someone will come into the office and ask a question, and then the staff workers literally have to page through 10,000 loose pages to look for the information. And we do a lot of work in Mamelodi Cemetery, so we really wanted to try and at least photograph the pages so that the existing pages are saved. So we've been literally just trying to sort them. You know, this is now N. And we wanted to A, sort them, and B, make a digital copy that would be available, so that if anything happens to this that survives, you know, there'll be something, some digital trace of these records. I think it was 2006. We were investigating the case of Lux Martin Goodley, who was the first security detainee to die in police custody. He was found hanged in a cell here in Pretoria. He was from Cape Town originally, one of the first members of MK. And nobody knew what happened to his body. He was found hanged. The family was told that he was dead. There was an inquest which found that he had committed suicide. Nobody knew what happened to his body. And we worked through these pages, and we found the page that had his name on it. And it told us that he was in the middle position in a pauper grave in that field. The security police described abducting this young man and strangling him to death with wire around the neck. And then they dumped his body and they set him on fire and put a tire on top of him to make it look like he'd been necklaced by local comrades. And then local children playing thought actually it was the body of a cow or a sheep burning, and they called their father. Their father went and realized it was a human being, called the police. And the police called the mortuary van. He comes in, here's body 413, unknown black man, estimated Tswana, 40 years old. Body not identified. Cause of death, heat wound through anterior neck. Police station Syferkuil. And there's the docket number. We recovered the docket. The docket also included the forensic report, which stated that the forensic pathologist could see that the throat had been cut by something.
Young students in Mamelodi Township outside Pretoria vanished in operations carried out jointly by the merciless Northern Transvaal branch of the Security Police and the South African Defence Force between 1986 and 87. They were drugged, burnt to death. Others were strangled or tortured and electrocuted to death. Using limpet mines, their bodies were detonated into fragments.
Get the rest and be ready for Thursday.
There are key documents for us which are indispensable. And when you're looking for bodies, mortuary books are the very first place you're going to go. We have two kinds of cases, really. The one kind is the kind of clandestine, secret abductions and disposals where the people are killed and disposed of in a manner and place known only to the small group of maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people who were involved. And those ones we will generally never find unless the perpetrators involved give us some information. The second kind of case is where the bodies were essentially left in the public domain. Either it was a skirmish, or even if it was a clandestine killing, the bodies were left in a public place. And the Mamelodi 10 really is one of those cases, because although it was a clandestine operation and their death was faked as an accident, the bodies were left out in the public. And so the mortuary books, this is the Garankuwa mortuary book from 1985 to 87. This one is the 1987 onwards. And in this book, it's a register, so any single body that comes in gets entered, gets a number. If it gets identified, name, surname, etc. State of matrimony, very important apparently. This is South Africa, race, age and sex, birthplace, where they died or where they were found, date and time, their address and occupation, who brought them to the mortuary, date and time, who identified the body, in the presence of whom and on what date. Here, absolutely critical for us, cause of death. And even more critical, intended place of burial and date of removal of body, date and time of removal, name and address of relatives or undertaker who's going to bury the body. Even if it's a pauper or unknown person, an undertaker will remove the body. And then this column, general remarks, it'll describe the death as hanging, falling, stabbing, accident, natural, etc. And it gives a reference to the police station and a docket number. So it means we can go and retrieve the docket number. So these mortuary books are just an absolute rich source of information. And a lot of our work involves going through mortuary books all over the country. We have compiled a map of where all the state mortuaries were, because any unidentified body who's died of unnatural causes will be taken to a state mortuary. don't know.
Ribs.
Ribs. Package. So another document that has been absolutely critical for us is what we call the Security Police Photo Album. And it's an album compiled of people who left the country illegally, who basically went into exile. Take one example. Photo number 13. Walter Jockey Olset. It says he's from the Northern Transvaal Police Division. This is afdeling, that's division. So it's basically from which police division he's from. Northern Transvaal, that's essentially Pretoria and surrounds. And the last column here is, such an indicator of South African racial classification. 1, referring to white people, 2, referring to Indians or Asians, 3, referring to colored people, and 4, referring to black South Africans. Once a person was either captured, killed, or imprisoned, they would be crossed out. In some of the albums, you'll see that they actually have a red line drawn through them in the photograph. This one doesn't. But here in the index, a star is put next to their name, and you can see that Walter Olset has a star next to his name. And that's because he was killed in July, I think it's the 11th of July 1986. He was part of a group of 6 MK members who crossed into the country from Botswana. And the driver of the vehicle was actually a security policeman, a black security policeman who had effectively managed to infiltrate some structures in Botswana, and had put himself forward as someone who could provide transport. He'd said that his father was a taxi driver, and he provided the transport, and he drove to a prearranged spot, jumped out the vehicle, and the security forces were waiting there, and they opened fire on the vehicle, and all 6 were killed. And in fact, last year, we just identified through DNA the last of the 6, Thabo Ramutle from Garankuwa. Sydney and Nkosinati Mavuka, we're still looking for him. He left the country in 1980, and the ANC sent him in around the end of 1982 through Mozambique and Swaziland. He's never been seen again. We're still looking for him. You know, our origins come out of the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC, and the TRC looked at killings, torture, severe ill treatment, abductions and disappearances. And when the TRC finished its work, there were still a lot of abductions and disappearances that were unresolved. And so one of the recommendations made in the TRC report was that government must set up a task team in the NPA to carry on looking for those who disappeared in political circumstances between 1960 and 1994. So essentially our mandate arises out of the work of the TRC, and technically we should look at TRC cases, but it's practically impossible to separate out TRC and non-TRC cases because, you know, we've got incidents where people died together. In one incident, some were reported to the TRC and others not. When we do an exhumation, we don't know who was reported to the TRC or not. So we are just going to recover all the remains, identify, and return to the families. So it's not practically possible to just focus on cases that were reported to the TRC. And we continue to get families coming with genuine, legitimate political disappearances coming and reporting to us. So we also do a lot of what we call investigative excavations, which are not public, which are just our team working opening graves, checking, opening graves, checking. We do a lot of that, and that is out of the public eye. So we were able to track through the mortuary books. We were able to match a lot of the incidents described by the Northern Transvaal Security Police to the TRC Amnesty Committee. And when they described these incidents, they were extremely vague. They couldn't give dates. They would say sometime 1986, 87, 88. And then they would say, yeah, the guy was strangled with wire and then we burnt him. And then we would have to take that information and search through the books until we found something that approximated the description, recovered the docket, and we were able to start matching disappearances of individuals with bodies entering the mortuary and with descriptions given by the perpetrators to the TRC.
Jeremiah kama heinous atse. Iskolong na salaf na ya skolong every day. Na lo kwaita hampe. Mo bile na promise roma na ke tlo ba lawyer. Ke a skolong ke nyako ba lawyer. Ke re wa o nyako ba lawyer. Ale ke nyako to thusa batho.
Ngwana go go dila le stele a rata skolo. Go ne ro go thoma tsona tse tsa morusu. Ne le leader le comrade. Sa le politiki ntate ya motsena mo tlhebe o itse e bile tlheksa ke bia la as a class a dumela. Mara skolo ba ya.
Umfowethu bekusida omncane kithi la ekhaya owalahleka ngo-1986 athi kimi wasitshela wathi nakasuka la ekhaya wathi uye ebholweni tsatsilele ngimaphodisa a Motsere ba bethile ba re ba tsentsitse ko khetsing ba ira ba a tlalemetse ke a mo tlhola ka mo ko munyako bjana ke bona melwa hae o na le in maloni ngibiza mangithi uzohlola usipho bona unjani wavula ngespeed nasivula sithola umntwana ukuthi ulimele nasimbuza ukuthi bokuphi atha besiyozabalaza amaphoyisa sithola bashaya
Go tloa yona nako eo maphodisa ke a thoma re harasa. He go ka fisiwa bakery a banya go itse gore ntse o le teng gore ntse o se teng o ka re ntse ba tshwere list ya rona re tla tlo tshwariwa ra isiwa police station ra bethiwa re nne dibeke 2 weeks 3 weeks re le ko police station ba sa dumelle gore re boniwe mo especially he re gobetse ro fola re le mole re sa charge next ba ntse ba re tlosa ko police station ya Mamelodi ba re sa Silverton ba re tlose Silverton ba re se go ya Fleria fela bjalo ba re tlose kwa ba re se Joburg ba re tsamaisa fela di police station tse e be re fole mo le re fodile e be ba rentsa.
Dr. Fabian Ribeiro was interviewed at his rooms in the black township of Mamelodi outside Pretoria while treating 18 black youths who had been detained by Botswana police on the night of the 14th. Their detention took place in Mabopane, a township within Botswana, 50 kilometers north of Pretoria. The youths were ushered outside by police, ordered to strip naked and lie down in muddy conditions. They were then beaten by policemen wielding sjambuks, canes, knobkerries and rifle butts. A so-named guard of honor was then formed by 2 rows of policemen leading to each vehicle. One by one, the youths were ordered to run the gauntlet through the guard of honor. As they ran to the waiting vehicles, they were again beaten by the policemen forming the guard of honor with sjambuks, rifles, knobkerries and canes. On arriving at the vehicle, they found it locked and were beaten while desperately trying to open the door. At the police station, a second guard of honor awaited them, and they were systematically beaten once more in a similar fashion. They were held at Jericho police station for 6 days, 52 in one cell. During this time, they were kept naked and randomly beaten by policemen at regular intervals. Once a day, 4 plates of porridge were provided for the 52 detainees. On one day, no food was given. At no time were they interrogated, and on the 6th day, they were released and told to go home.
Mahostel sa le ba bolaya student sa ko re Thabile ele chief prefect ko sekolong sa ka ba re ke Obed Matlala ba molaya ba re o tshwere le hostel le lengwe po kantentsa ilo reka nama ko busharing so ka hele hostel le tshwere po ba sa kry the culprit yena ka gore ntsa sanne ka mo hostel and then ale ka mo premises kana kweo then ba ntshetsa mo yena ba mmolaya khante ba ibakile ka night vigil re boletse gore he re tlhama bitleng ka Saterta re tlo fisa hostel ra dumellana ene lona tšatši leo jo mama selantsa le teng Comrade Mike ntse re mitse as Comrade Mike ntse le teng he ke he a tshepisa vele gore go tlo tsamaiwa system e nya go re bolaya.
Goeienaand. Daar kom tye in die geskiedenis van nasies dat 'n keuse gemaak moet word tussen onaangename alternatiewe. Die keuse tussen oorlog en 'n oneerbare vreesagtige vrede is so 'n voorbeeld. Die besluit om 'n noodtoestand af te kondig, soos wat ek vandag gedoen het, verteenwoordig ook so 'n keuse.
The Mamelodi 10 were 10 young teenagers, actually school students from Mamelodi, who were abducted from Mamelodi. It was a joint operation by the South African Defence Force and the security police. And they sent in an agent, Joe Mamasela, to pretend to be an MK member.
Waitsi kena le thabo le lengwe le lentšhi gore bjanong ka tsamaya bjanong ke lo traina no so bjanong ke a ikutlwa gore ya nyahamba mara I didn't tell anyone le kokwaka.
He posed as an MK member, came with a combi, a minibus, and persuaded them to get in the minibus, that he was going to take them to exile.
Ngambona akhwele ikhumbi ngambona mina ngambuza Sipho uyaphi na hayi sesingiyabuya kusasa siya ebholweni ngithi mara kusebusuku manje athi hayi ungahlupheki ngiyabuya kwabe kumgcina kwakhe agcoke ibhruku elibrown neskipa esibovu I tracksuit neskipa esibovu wahamba ke azange sambona
re le fela re tlhatswa le kokwaka hona le khibe ngwe ya hae ntsa e rata ka tsia khiba ile le tuku ya hae ka re kokwaka ntse lo moholo so ke tsia khiba e le tuku e gore ke mo hopole ka tsona le go ke tla be ke le go teng he ke re ka tswa kokwaka re o yapi ke rai nyemithinini at before khamba ngithathela umuthi e83 yes 83 ai ke mo hapeletse ke rawa a ke 83 ka maoto a re maro tlholo tsamaya mo ska maoto wa ka tjo ke re ena wa nletedisa ke chairperson kwa le tshwantse ke share meeting antse chelete ke re mpha ya ganentreg ke shiane ke 83 ke motsiele setlhare seo sa hae no ke mo febile ka senya ke lo rabolele le nna ka itse gore o tlo mpha mmereko mo ka mo fa setlhare sa hae ka se bia mo hatse mo le ka tswa ka shiana nna mele taxi Deneboom he ke fitla Deneboom ke kere khumbi yemi a shiba le ba ka mohare kenonare yo hape bile ntse sentse re o beetse 5 minutes re ra o shia ha ke tsena mo khumbing awa ba ntse sentse ba ntse hona le space mo rankakata ke mshimano mongwe a ke meets and then ke di cooler box di tromeletse tsa masole nyana tse wa di bona di tletse byala di cold drink hona ka mo ai ke fete ke nne le rooibart jo mama salaria I think re felletse monyako tswaliwe a re shayang ngoma
nanka la mapunu
ra tsamaya mo le sentse re elo tsena ko Zerust gwa tla Sierra se se grey Sierra se le se overtake khumbi ya rena ge se no se overtake khumbi sar di hazard ke bona mama sela a lebella ka speed ai ke bolela le rooibart se ga tagiwe yo ka tshoga thata ka tshoga thata be ke thoma ka lla hona mo ra fitla Zerust ko crashing here fitla Zerust ko crashing a re no khale re tsamaya le tshwere ke tlala he re boa le dijo a shule yena wa tsamaya o lebakwa ke ya lebella rena re motho o ya kae kwa ke bona Sierra sele se eme khole kwa o ya ko Sierreng ka ikutlwa fela wa itse ke freezer ka re mo mathata rena ka mantši he ke re ka lebella gore kana re tlhagare le kae o boela morao o re o ya kae a o itse le pleke a o itse silo mo wa itse ka tlhakatlhakana there and there then o setse ke lebelletse gore o boa le mang mo minding wa ka ke gore he a boa o tla le makhowa ba ba tlhapetswe ba ba opela man ba opela ke bolela le Kenone ha shule ha tshwarege ona mo a go bue mama sela ha bue go boa go tla butomong ka ya toilet ka re mo a ke sa inamela khumbi ha o go inamela ngwaka ba tla nlata ka mo toilet mara fela so ke itebeletse a ke saya ka nnete ka se ka I utlwe bile le tsamaya.
He drove them to a prearranged spot in the bushes outside Zerust, and they were taken out of the minibus. There were security force members waiting there. They were injected with a substance which made them unconscious. And then the 10 were put into another minibus, and an accident was staged. And the minibus was set on fire, and the 10 were burned to death.
Ebathule nje baziqiniso awuyo yo esekuyo ebathule nje baziqiniso awuyo esekuyo awusikho kele male
Brigadier Jack Cronje, former commander of the Northern Transvaal security branch, calmly told the Amnesty Committee of yet another calculated and chilling execution in 1986. The victims, 10 young men from Mamelodi who were poisoned and then blown up in a minibus. There was no question of arresting or detaining them, Cronje said. For the first time, the members of the Amnesty Committee, particularly Judge Hassan Moll, were visibly shocked at the gruesome details placed before them.
The big men who make and break the laws had just declared a state of emergency across the land. 10 days after the state of emergency, 10 young men disappeared from Mamelodi. It is known only that they were comrades. Like most black youth at the time, they were prepared to do battle against the big men.
From 86 to 1996. Re sa itse gore bana ba kae re le sure gore ba skipile ka bana a re utlwisile gore ba ile kae. Ne re tsamaya re nyaka go itse gore bana ba feletse kae re ntse mo and then a re itse gore bana ba kae.
Ke nyakile ka dumela ke re na hantaela ka dumela ke ile Gauteng tsa ke mongantaela Gauteng a re ngwana wa ha ona tsamaela Gauteng ko ye ko ka ya ntaela ka ke ranta tsa ko teng ka ranta teng ngwana a re bena na ibe ke tsa o feta ka re motho o na le 2 weeks ko ga ya teng a re no ba buile ne re na ba di comrades tsa Mamelodi mo na tlile le group engwe ya hae ba le mo ba e ba buile ba botse hae ka re ha ya ba fitla.
You are the first people of Mamelodi who submit a statement. Go ya TRC and then ke mo go TRC ke mo re utlwileng gore bana ba timetse ene bana ba tlhokofetse ba braile ke maburu mo tseleng ba balaetse ko pleke ba re ke net for dint da ba bitsa pele net for dint 10